In this video, you'll learn how to create a sequence diagram like this to explain how you came up with that unique looking concept for your project. Listen, this type of diagram can be really handy to explain your design process, or even to show the site parameters that influenced your project. But before we move into the actual lesson, I want to quickly talk about the new competition of Project Unbuilt, these incredible representation challenges where I'm the co-founder. But here's how the video is going to be structured, and down below you can find timestamps if you want to skip ahead or watch something again if you need. So if you're looking for a place to practice this particular skill, sequence diagrams, the new Project Unbuilt challenge is here for you. The first competition was so good, and everyone who joined really loved the possibility to practice a visual skill without having to worry too much about the project. You can focus on learning something new, so that when the time to design a new project comes, you have that technique under your belt. Diagrams gained a lot of meaning in the Industrial Revolution with mass production in factories and the birth of the manual. Then architects started incorporating this type of drawing in their work. Some even say that Peter Eisman is the father of diagrams. And today, with the help of digital tools, we've got a handful of types of diagrams, and they really evolved since then. I'm now going to explain everything about the competition now, but if you got interested, make sure to stick to the end of the video to know more about it. Or head over to the website projectunbuilt.com to get the full information. First link in the bio. And this tutorial that you're about to watch can help you get started in this world if you've never heard or done any type of sequence diagram. Just a quick word between us, don't copy this result to join the competition. That won't work. But try to learn the moves here to create your own entry, alright? Cool, so questions, comments down below, and let's get to this lesson. Okay, so the lesson starts here, with this model already. I'm using this model of a city. Usually you can model it yourself pretty easily using a 3D software, because these are some fairly basic shapes, and it's easy to do if you have a good site drawing that contains the surroundings. And then for the project, well, it's just a concept, but I used the same concept as the METZ building from Big, just so that I had something interesting to show you. Listen, sequence diagrams, more specifically concept ones, you need to model each step individually, so that you can export them separately. There are different ways to do it. For example, you can model each step in the same place and use the layers to hide them as you create the scenes, or model them next to each other and duplicate the site to go along each step. It really depends on the occasion. I've already set this scene to be in parallel projection, as I feel it's better than perspective for diagrams. Last video I used perspective, but with a very narrow field of view so that it's as close as parallel projection as possible. I'm gonna leave a link in the video description or on the cards if you haven't watched that one. So then I modeled two steps here because the second step volumetric will serve for the third one as well, and it's the same shape but showing different information. Okay, then I've set the view to be in isometric, and this is really important since I'm going to add objects in isometric to look like they're inside the diagram later on. Now we can begin the export process, and I'm gonna move a bit faster here as I had to do a lot of things, but I'll make sure to explain the most important steps for you, and the comment section is always open for any questions, so be sure to drop yours there. First thing is to change the view style to something cleaner. I like using this one, hidden lines, where it's just lines and a white background so that we don't have any fills later on to work with. Now, this is something that I just recently discovered. I want to have square drawings for this diagram as each step and not export the whole thing. In SketchUp, you can just drag the sidebar here to crop out the areas and have a smaller viewport. And we're going to use this boundary to export the drawing. You don't necessarily need to do this, you can always crop it later in Illustrator or Photoshop. Next, we need to export each step as a PDF file. Last video I showed you how to do the whole process using only Photoshop. Now I'm showing you how to do it mostly in Illustrator and get Photoshop only to do some corrections. So choose PDF so that we can work with the lines in Illustrator. Here under Options, click Default and make sure that you've got the Match Screen Display enabled, and I usually turn the other ones off. And then Export. Now do that for every different step you've got, and remember to have the exact same settings here so that they will match and align perfectly later. Now we're in Illustrator. Simply grab the PDF file and drag it into Illustrator to open it as a new file. That looks pretty good already, and I usually start by selecting everything and giving it a uniform line thickness. Maybe 1 point, but then we can always change it later if we need to. In the Layers tab, I'm going to start renaming the layers to contain each step so that we treat the layer as a folder. And so that we have it organized, I'm going to group all of these individual line pieces. You're going to see that this will make sense in just a moment. And now that we have one step ready, repeat the same thing to the other sequence tabs. And whenever importing a new PDF file into an Illustrator, make sure to open it as a new file and not drop it into an existing one. This will ensure that you open it as selectable objects. That's really important. Then copy and paste it in the main file, but make sure to paste it in a new layer, alright? And as you can see, there's some overlapping happening here, but that's not a problem because we're always going to export them individually and never going to export with all the layers turned on. And be sure to have the same look and the same appearance on all base drawings so that they don't look different from each other, like having the same line thickness and all. And then for my case here, my third and last step, I'm going to duplicate the layer step 2. By the end of this first part in Illustrator, you should have something like this, each step containing the line drawing in a group. With this ready, we can go back to SketchUp to generate a clay render using V-Ray. Okay, so here in V-Ray, there are basically 3 steps, okay? And you should be able to achieve the same result or something really close in pretty much any rendering engine out there. First up, enable material override so that every material looks the same and we get that uniform clay render look. Second, render output. Change the aspect ratio to match the viewport so that we have the exact same view to align with the line drawing. And while you're here, increase the image width to something somewhat large. I'm gonna go for 4000 pixels. And third, here on the lights, we need to increase the size multiplier to a large number to get a soft shadow. The bigger the number, the softer the shadow will be. By the way, this is something that I teach in detail over the isometric diagrams masterclass. There, I go really in depth and explain every little step over 5 different types of diagrams. Links down below if you want to master diagrams with this course. Cool, now that we have these 3 settings adjusted, and feel free to tweak other things if you think it's necessary. And then finally, click render. Well, this does indeed look bad, but don't worry. I'd much rather spend a little bit of time over Photoshop to fix it and adjust to the exact look I need, instead of trying 1,000 settings combinations to get a better result. And be sure to render this clay render for every step you've got, and then once it's finished, we can jump into Photoshop to quickly fix them. Here in Photoshop, import all renderings into a single file, because we're going to adjust them both at the same time. Then make sure your Adjustment Layers tab is open, and let's start with Hue and Saturation to make it grayscale. Then Levels Adjustment. What we're looking to do here is to get all the highlights to be completely white, so that once we add them to Illustrator, they don't change the diagram overall look, but just adds a little bit of depth. And to do that, just grab this little arrow here, which is the highlights, and drag until it reaches the first line of information. You can even go past it a little bit to overexpose everything. And then to make it all a little less contrasty, you can drag the middle arrow to the left. That's it. Now we can save it, and I'm gonna overwrite the existing ones and save this one as a PSD so that I have a backup just in case. Okay, so we're now back here in Illustrator, and by the way, I'm being as simple as I can on these sequence steps, but there's a lot more information you can add. There are literally endless ways to do this. You can add callout boxes, annotations, more arrows, more fills, and a lot more elements. So be creative and take advantage of this type of diagram. Okay, so first step is to import the clay render, and since we made sure to use the same viewport, it's quite an easy task to do. But I want to say that it's not required to make them the same aspect ratio. You can always crop it out with Photoshop and align it by eye. So import all renders, and whenever a copy is needed, like in layer 3 for example, just make a copy. And then you've got 2 options. Either change the image blend mode to multiply so that it blends in with everything that you add to the layer, and that's usually what I do. Just make sure to lock it so that it doesn't bother you while you work. And then the second option is to leave the render below everything, since our line work doesn't have any type of fill. Remember, each layer is a big group, like a big folder, and we can rearrange the object's order inside it. Then even when doing all the steps in Photoshop to fix the clay render, you may want to reduce the overall intensity. So play with the opacity. Maybe something like 50% here works great. Next, it's all about the step elements, so that you mark and highlight the information or movements that are happening. The hardest part, to be honest, is done. It now depends on your design and what narrative you're creating. Telling a story, therefore having a start, middle, and end, can help you give more meaning to the diagram. Arrows are a great way to show how a basic meshing or the initial design is being transformed. I'm going to leave a really old video that I have here on the channel that explains in detail how to place any object in isometric. Or if you want to find the steps on Google, just search for SSR method, which stands for scale, shear, and rotate. And in this last step, I can select all the lines and hit K to use the Live Paint bucket tool to add fills to some areas. Just be aware that you need to expand and maybe ungroup to edit the shapes that this tool creates. And I guess something that, in my opinion, has to have in diagrams, well, most of the diagrams, is a thicker outer stroke. It makes a whole lot of difference. Usually I do it around the building volume or volumes, so that it adds that extra bit of contrast and help direct people's eyes to the project, and even helps you emphasize the building's silhouette. And then lastly, you export each of these images individually and compose them into a sequence manner. It can be arranged in any format, but usually adding a title and some description is a good way to do it. Or even add a title inside the image in isometric, that also works. Really, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Alright, that was an intense video. A lot of things to cover, I know, but if you have any questions, drop them below and I'll do my best to help you out. And if you want to get in-depth lessons in isometric diagrams, don't forget to check the Isometric Diagrams Masterclass. Now let's talk about the competition. So in this challenge, your task is to come up with the building in the very first stage of a design, just a concept, and create a sequence diagram to explain it, to show how you got to the final form of the building, to essentially explore its concept through a narrative. The only thing we're setting is the site and its initial parameters. The rest is on you. You decide what type of building it will be, how large, if it will take advantage of the river, the park, and the outdoor areas, or not. The briefing explains it all, but any questions are either answered on the FAQ, or you can reach out directly to the organization, or even comment on this video down below. The competition officially starts today with the launch of this video and will run for 30 days. There's a pretty good prize for the first place and also prizes for honorable mentions. We made the fee as low as we could, added a bunch of options for discounts so that this is more of an opportunity for you to practice and learn something new in a safe environment. And the cool thing is that after the competition, you can compare the results and see how you could have approached this challenge by looking at other diagrams. There's just a little bit of design, but what will be most relevant in this competition to the jury is the representation. A lot of major firms, or really any architecture practice, uses this type of diagram. So reference searching is a vital step to this challenge to know what are the possibilities and even go beyond what has already been done. I hope you're excited as I am about this competition, as I'm also part of the jury this time, and let me know if you have any questions left so we can continue this conversation over the comment section. And don't forget to go to the website to get the full info about the competition. Thanks for watching, subscribe to not miss out any new content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.